Hello, WonderCon, and thanks so much for joining us on Dial the Gate. My name is David Reed. Welcome to our show. We broadcast every weekend on YouTube at youtube.com/dialthegate. We started in October of last year and have now reached over 65 episodes of various casts and crew of Stargate SG-1, Atlantis, and Universe have been featured. What we're going to do with this two-part retrospective here at WonderCon is take a look back at some of our more favorite moments over the past 6 months, give you a taste of the show, and we hope you'll come back on youtube.com/dialthegate or go to dialthegate.com and look at our ongoing schedule of live events so you can take part yourself and celebrate the Stargate franchise. Thanks so much for joining us, and enjoy the show. I think it's fitting that Jack O'Neill asks this. Hey, Joe, what was it like to work with Meredith?
What was it like to work with Meredith? I'm confused.
Really?
Yeah.
Dr. Meredith Rodney McKay. Oh, Joe.
Oh, my God. Oh, I thought you, first I was like, oh, my God, you're talking about a guest star named Meredith.
Nope.
And I'm so sorry that it's like, oh, yeah, okay. You know, I forget that his middle name is a woman's name.
His middle name is Rodney.
I think it's fitting. What was it like to work with Rodney? Okay, so I have so much to say about this.
Go ahead.
First of all, it was like when David and I started working together, something kind of clicked right away. And it was not unlike the road shows with Bob Hope and Fred Astaire. There was just this easy banter, and we were so different that it was really funny. And it was really fun to work with. And David is a really talented actor. And so I have to lay down the context really fast. I'm flying back between LA and Vancouver quite a bit. And I find myself occasionally sitting with Rick on the plane. And I remember sitting next to him and I said, so Rick, do you have any advice, now that I'm doing the show? And he's like, he can be a little gruff. And he was like, advice, kind of advice. I don't have any advice. I was like, wow, okay. Okay, MacGyver. My God, MacGyver's a little grumpy, right? I didn't realize it wasn't about that at all. And 30 minutes later, he goes, oh, don't do the gobbledygook. And I was like, okay, what is the gobbledygook? He said, you know the gobbledygook. The gobbledygook is all the sci-fi techie language about this and this and that you never understand. And you're sitting there explaining the whole episode. If you do it good, and if you do it well, they will keep giving it to you, and they will keep giving you more and more and more. And if you're not good at it, somebody else has to do it. Now, this was probably the best advice I got. So I was given some stuff, and I purposely sabotaged it. And I was like, oh my God, I think Hewlett is probably much better equipped to handle this type of dialogue than I am. And I'm not the smart guy. I don't want to be the smart guy.
He was in Mensa, or he could have been in Mensa.
Yeah, well, exactly. The
right.
whole thing. I was like,
it's like, that's not cool. I fly helicopters.
Subterranean smart. And so anyways, sure enough, Hewlett was saddled with everything. And it was hilarious. I have seen Hewlett laugh and cry and curl into fetal positions and freak out. The amount of work he had to do cracked me up. Now, it stressed him out, and I was literally laughing all the time. Like, I helped create these conditions for you. And so...
And thank you for entertainment for the rest of us.
And yeah, so working with him was a joy. And actually, I kind of thinking to myself, I have no idea how that show would be without him. I mean, he's just, it's like peanut butter and jelly. Is like just a jelly sandwich good? No, I can't picture the show without those two characters.
Yeah, he is in many respects the technical propulsion that moves the story along. He mentions the thing of the MacGuffin of this and that allows you to go, that's crazy. All right, let's go fight them off. Right, exactly. And I remember
and by the way, as opposed to science fiction movies are very big productions, and you can show a planet blowing up. Okay, you got the money to do it. Well, we don't quite have that money, so we have to explain the planet blew up for the most part. And so science fiction television, I think, is something every actor should do because it's very difficult. You're having to take a lot of material that's really complicated and address and say it in some way you're not going to lose people's attention.
Correct.
And David was able to do that like masterfully.
And
I knew I couldn't.
That's fair.
So I was like, you do it.
You had indicated before that you had always wanted to go to Vancouver. Tell us about being cast as Master Braytac.
Yeah, I always wanted to go to Vancouver because my wife and I had gone through. We took our first vacation together in 1983 and went to Banff Jasper, Canadian Rockies. Flew into Vancouver, took the train across. So we fell in love with Vancouver because it was summer. So it was summer, and it's as glorious a place as you can imagine in summer. So I was always jealous. My friends were working in Vancouver. I never got the opportunity. So I did Mask of Zorro. I was only home a week or so. Agent called, Audition, Stargate. I had seen the movie and enjoyed the movie. This 133-year-old blank shoots up in Vancouver, and it was the 4th of July weekend. So I really, what do you do on the 4th of July weekend? After you celebrate, I had time, so I really worked on the script. And I was really prepared for the audition. And I really wanted to go to Vancouver. And sure enough, it happened. And one of the things I think made it happen, there's a special time for an actor after they finish a big film where they're sort of hot because the film hasn't come out and hasn't been a success or a flop yet, but there's a possibility that you could get this guy and he's just gonna. So I think it makes those little things make a difference. I think that having just come off the film, I also did an audition I was very pleased with. So that's sort of how it all came together. And now you probably want to hear the story about when I arrived and then realized I'm worried about the makeup.
Jan Newman, right?
Jan Newman. I'm sorry, probably some of the people have heard the story. I'm sorry, but
no, please.
So I arrive and I think, and my wife, if I'm working in Oklahoma or if I'm working in some other places, say, that are not as desirable to visit, she will not come. But boy, Vancouver, New Orleans, those types of Mexico, she'll come. So she was so excited to come back. But now I realize, oh my God, she's going to be here. We want to enjoy the town as well as do this work. And I'm playing a 133-year-old guy. It's going to be a makeup chair, 4:30 in the morning. I'm going to be fried. And so I get there, I do my wardrobe fitting, which is great. I'm going to leave. And the second AD say, hey, makeup key, Jan wants to see you. And I'm thinking, here it comes. Can we shave your head? Can we, something, and I go in and she just looks at me. So did it. She said, oh, you're perfect as you are. And all of a sudden I'm like, wait, 133, I'm perfect as I am. But
now you're insulted.
now I'm insulted. But guess what? I have never, with Braytac at least, I have never met a fan who says, oh, you've gotten old. You see, you can't say that about Braytac. You started at 133. I mean, the guy's always going to look good. He's always going to be,
Someone in chat, I was peeking in. Someone said, "There's no way he's 69." So they're like, "Nah, that's not possible. He looks younger than that." So there you go.
I feel younger than that. When you get to be 69, you realize you're
absolutely
your naughtiest 15 always. It's always there. You may not act on it, but.
So you spent a lot of time on location for that episode, and you really got to experience the outdoors. But tell me about the weight of that initial costume. First season, they had not really tweaked the costumes yet as they did as the story went on.
No, it was very heavy. But first, let me say, working outdoors, everyone, I got such a welcome from people when I went back. From the crew and everything, they just could not have been nicer. And then I always realized the other shoe would fall because they realized if Braytac was back, we were going to a gravel pit. There was going to be some, so they were going to have to.
There were a few pits in Vancouver that did just that.
Yeah, I spent so much time there. But yeah, the wardrobe as an actor, what I hate is if you have very uncomfortable things that add nothing to the depiction of the character. There's not, there's someone else's idea of something. You have no connection to them. You just have to wear a funny hat that goes, it has to go to the left, has nothing to do with the character. It's because the other one is going to the right. So you're trying to juggle it. But I never resented the clothes for Braytac, which were very heavy. There was chainmail. There were plastic pieces, there were robes, there were capes. I mean, it was probably, I'd say 50, 60 pounds.
It's like this guy right here next to me.
Oh my God. And then you're talking about that guy,
with the helmet.
The pneumatic head. Oh, yeah.
Right.
But it looks so good. And one thing about carrying a lot of weight all day is that when you take it off at the end of the day, you feel like for the people that have played basketball or wore ankle weights, it's that light feeling you feel. So I always enjoyed it. Enjoy is not the right word. I was always very tolerant of it. Although sometimes, and this is Jan, they would, with the heat in that first episode, man, it was hot.
Yeah,
quite hot with my, they'd lift my little cap and literally water would pour out.
Yeah, because it all goes out at the top of your head.
Oh, yeah, it's 30% of your heat, right? Believe me, I know. So Jan, to this day, she'd have a little thing with ice and she'd have face cloths in it with sea breeze. And she'd put them on the back of your neck and on your wrists and everything. But there was a funny thing that happened once that I'll never forget. They put your makeup on and they have to put sunscreen. Again, you're out in the sun. And I have my little
tattoo.
Yep. I have my little golden guy. And I guess sometimes time went by and they didn't do it. And when they took it off, I sort of had a tan.
You're kidding.
Yeah, very, very faint. She said, "Oh, well, yeah, I guess we'll be more careful with the sunscreen tomorrow." But I said, "Oh, hey, we know what the positioning is now.
You can line it right back up. Forget the Polaroids."
Well, it's so funny, and there's always the joke. People are fascinated, when you go to a con, they're saying, how did they attach that? And particularly if it's a young boy or girl, I'll look at them very seriously and say, "Oh, my tattoo?" Said they use the nail gun. And I can always see them, that their eyes, it's good like that.
You're bad, Tony.
I am bad, but I love that. But that's, the great thing with and every so often, because we've been around so long, the parrot will say, "Yeah, he told me that joke too."
Do you know the in-canon story of how it's done?
No, what's that?
So a certain Jaffa or gold knife is used to cut the flesh, and then pure molten gold is poured in.
Molten gold.
It's pretty intense.
If you're lucky, it's gold. Right. If you're lucky, it's gold. If you're a peon, it's not.
Right. It's some kind of silver or something. Absolutely.
Silver, yeah.
I will tell you one really funny thing that I had to do. It wasn't on the show, on camera, but Rachel was going to have her first child, right?
Yeah.
And she was pregnant in the show, and she was playing the Wraith. She played a Wraith Queen, right?
When she was in the makeup?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Queen, season 5. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So she was really pregnant at the time, right?
Okay.
And she was going to have the baby imminently. And all the girls in the makeup trailer were making these a beautiful book for her, and everyone was writing stuff in the book and really lovely stuff. And they kept on saying, "Paul, what are you going to do? I think something good. I got to think something good." And so Rachel had kind of shorter hours at the time because she was, they were working hard, right?
They were working.
So she left and said, I got it. So Jason Momoa was there. I go, "You got to help me do this." And he's like, "Great." Rachel had an amazing stunt double, looked just like her, right? Amazing. So what happened is when Rachel left, I got all of the stunt doubles, wig and everything, Rachel's outfit, the pregnant belly. I put it all on. The girls did my makeup like Rachel. Okay. Did you know this? And so I got Jason Momoa and I got Rachel's fighting sticks and we did a photo shoot. I can't remember the pictures. That's so funny. I can't remember who took the pictures. Anyway, we went out there, and I'm fighting Jason as Rachel in this makeup, and I have the sticks and everything. And then I go into her trailer, and I said, "Mama's tough," and I took a picture of her fighting with Jason, and then Mama's sexy. And then I'm in Rachel's trailer, lying on her bed with my hand like this, and Jason's there beside me, and then Mama's drunk. And I took a bunch of stuff from craft services, and I had to get some empty beer bottles and stuff, and I poured chips all over my pregnant belly, and all these different pictures of me, and Mommy's sensitive, I'm crying, and so I took all the pictures and put it in the very last page of her book, right, and all these captions in it. And so the next day, Rachel comes in, and Rachel's very sweet, and she's hyper pregnant, so she's really sensitive. So she's going through the book, and I make sure I'm scheduled at the same time as her. I'm like 2 chairs down, and I can hear her, and she's going through the book, and she's like, oh my God. She has Kleenex. Oh my God, you guys, that's so sweet, saying, oh, you're gonna be the best mom ever. And I'm like, oh, Rachel. She goes, shut up, Polly. And she's making fun of me. And she's going through, and she's reading all these different things from people. She keeps on reading, and I'm waiting for it. And she gets to mine, she's like, and it was the best reaction. So good. And I'm like, yes, I got you. And she was dying. It was so funny. And I still have those pictures somewhere.
You do?
Yeah,
she tore them out and gave them back to you? I was so surprised years later in finding out that there was going to be, that there were 2 more films in the original trilogy planned, because there's so few movies these days that end with the end, and Stargate does. I was like, that was good, And then I found out that you wanted to do 2 more. For the original trilogy, is there anything that you can say about what you wanted to do with it? I'd love to hear whatever you're willing to say. You just told earlier that there were 2 other locations that were planned, so a location for each additional movie.
I'll say this just because I don't think we're ever going to get to do it.
Right.
So, there are 2 different places on Earth that are famous for pyramids. And one was an Egyptian, and our second was going to be a Mayan culture.
Okay. So not necessarily Ra's race again. He was the last of his race for good.
Yeah. And then the third was going to tie in almost every mystery that we've ever had on Earth, whether it was Bigfoot or the Yeti, or we were going to tie everything into a larger mythology.
Tapestry.
Yeah. And it was going to be so much fun. It was going to be so wild, but we never got to go there. We never got to explore it.
Was it the TV franchise, the success of the TV franchise, that where MGM was like, no, we're just not interested in doing it this direction? What was it, money? What was the biggest factor in not pursuing that?
It was the television show. Okay. I mean, what had happened was, again, the film was made entirely independently. There was no studio involved. So MGM agreed to release the film when no one else would release it, because no one believed in the movie. And the week before the movie opened, the people who had financed the movie, which was a group out of France, they were so sure that they had a bomb, they sold the movie to MGM for $5 million. So then MGM owned the movie.
And I'm guessing even in that money, that was a steal at that time, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's a movie that cost $50 million.
$50 million.
And it made over $200 million at that time. It was the largest October opening in history at that time. And so MGM now owned it. And they decided they wanted to do a TV series. Roland and I went in to meet with them to talk about the series. And they said, oh, we don't really want you guys involved. And we were like, really? Okay. And they went on their own. Okay. And so it was a very painful thing for a long time, because you're watching.
Yeah, something that you gave birth to.
Somebody else raise your children. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it was very hard, and that's why it was so interesting, because I was very hostile to the series, especially because I don't
blame you.
But the first couple episodes of the series had full frontal nudity. Yeah. And I was like, that's not Stargate.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any idea what show we're doing?
Yeah. Even Brad Wright had a problem with that. That was Showtime. Showtime said, if you want this, it has to have that. And then they never did it again. And the final cut of Children of the Gods, they took it out. So
yeah. So I had kind of, rebelled again. I was angry that the studio had cut us out of it, that they didn't want to do the movies. But what was interesting is that many years later, it was obvious to me that even though I had not been watching the show, that they must have been doing something right, because you don't get to live that long. You don't get to have that many fans. You don't get that kind of passion unless you've done a really good show.
17 seasons,
Yeah.
350 episodes. Something's working. And the passion of the fan base has only grown.
One time I had to do walk and talk with Dean Henderson. And I had looked at the script and I had missed this part. I would always flip through. They get the script. I go, okay, blah, blah, Walter. Okay. And then I go through.
This has got to be 0 hour. No bunting.
I missed this one little scene where it was like Jack gets off O'Neill gets off the elevator.
The elevator.
And I meet him and I walk with him down the thing, and I'm basically bringing him up to speed on the other SG teams on what planet they're on. I look at this thing before we shoot it and I go, what scene is this? And they go, well, it's this scene. And I go, oh, I didn't realize that I was in that scene. I hadn't read it. And they give it to me and I go, oh my God. And it was like a block of dialogue like this, that I was just like talking. It was just totally expositional. And it had about 6 planets in there, right? Like PX9, 742.
The planets had to have been a bear. Get them all straight.
David. So I see it and I think to myself, so we have to rehearse it a bunch of times because they wanted to know, because it was a walk and talk, they wanted to know where we were going to end up. So they said, let's just rehearse it a bunch of times. So instead of using that time to memorize all the planets, I just think to myself, well, I'm just giving them the update on whatever. So I just made them up. I just made up the planets. And I'd be like, PX3, 742, they're back, SG2 is back from that, and then SG3 is heading out to PX9, 712, and I was just pulling numbers out of my ass.
I did never know this.
Yeah, but hang on. Just before we shoot, and I'm not kidding you, this is not a word of a lie, just before we shoot, the script supervisor comes up to me and goes, Gary, are you aware that you've been saying different planets every time? And I go, yeah, I am. I know. And she goes, well, no, you have to say the planets. You have to say it as written. And I go, yeah, but I'm just talking about the planets. It's like, why do I have to memorize them? And she goes, because we go there. She goes, because we go there. And I look at her and I go, oh my God. And now and I have to look at my sides again and I have to memorize them in about 30 seconds. And I managed to pull it off. David, don't ask me how I did it. I did it, but I was just dying. I'd wasted all this time. I could have been like memorizing as we're talking. Because when you're rehearsing just for blocking, I could be looking at my script like this and just, whatever, Jack, TX3, 912, whatever. No, I knew the words around them, but I just made up the planets.
You forced them in and they came back out. You just had to do it. So
I had to do it. And that's what happens when you're doing technical jargon like that on a show like that.
It was the first time that they had allowed me to be human. Up until then, I was an NID guy, and all I did was smirk at them, give them shit, and try to scare them. And
take tilk from them, and
once in a while get pushed back by a few things. But it was... And I think I talked about this particular scene that there was a scene in Foothold that was cut out of the production, probably because of length, or I'm not sure why, but it was with me and Amanda. And it started out with me screwing up Amanda's warning about a foothold and her famous Maybourne, you can be an idiot every day
of the week.
Take a day off. And then then we work through it all and we save her. And then at the end, there's a scene in the office with the general and with RDA, and we're doing a clearing stuff up, and they say, well, good job, Maybourne. And I say something like, well, I'd like to give credit to was she a colonel then? Colonel Carter?
It was Major Carter.
Major Carter. And they all sort of look at me like, and it takes me a while to try to say it. And she says something, and I say something back, and then I said something like, "Oh, well, perhaps we'll see each other again." And I give her this little look, and kind of embarrassed look, and I hope, well, maybe we'll see each other again. And O'Neill says, "Yeah, that would be nice." And it's like, for me, it's the shock thing. Well, it was that missing scene that made me do that scene that way, because it was in that scene where I had said something to her, and she had looked at me like, he's human. And I think Maybourne had, at some level, fallen slightly in love with Carter.
Who can blame him? We were all in love with Carter.
Oh, I know. Inside this little part, he'd gone, my God, what's happening to me? And so I can't remember what the scene looked like. I can't remember the dialogue. I don't have any of the scripts and stuff. Mm-hmm. So I have no idea what it looked like on the page or what it looked like when they filmed it. But was that little look back to her when I said, well, perhaps we'll get a chance to see each other again. And it was just this little
glance,
this little kind of half embarrassed, half excited glance that maybe it'll happen again.
Same thing when we went to NORAD the first time was we sort of called the production office, which was in its infancy at that point, saying, this is what we're going to need. And they said, okay, we can probably swing that. We can probably get that. So we went and I shot for 24 hours. And we were exhausted at the end of it. We got the film back, and like 2 weeks later, the pilot was on the air.
Wow.
And then in around year 7 or 8, we thought, boy, we're getting really tired of seeing the same establishing shots. How about we go back and shoot another day? And I said, I'll do it. Like, yeah, you can. You've got the clearances now. You do this kind of stuff.
You know what you'd like to see different now.
Yeah. And the fact is, I knew how to get into things and what I could see and things.
You shot there.
So yeah. So I landed, and I get off the plane, and there's a car waiting there for me, and the woman that was driving me was so exuberant about it. She goes, "Oh my God, we're so happy to have you here." The first time around, nobody knew who we were because nobody had ever seen the show. Nobody did anything like that. And I remember that the head of their security came up to me and said, yeah, I answer all these questions about nukes in the middle of the mountain and stuff. That's all the time. Now you're doing a show about something that's 28 floors beneath.
There's no missile silo there.
And no, and he goes, oh, great. So anyway, the second time I come in, this woman is so happy. This corporal that was driving me. We get there, and no, it was a captain that was driving me. It was an officer that was driving me. So this captain gets out and she says, "I'd like to introduce you to some people." And she opens the door, and we go into this room, and there's 200 people sitting there, and they cheer, and I'm like, "Hi," and I went, "How are you?" And they said, "We want to be in the movies." And I was like, so I had 200 people now that wanted to be background people on the new establishing shots and this. And they said they won the lottery to be able to do it. So it's like,
wow,
we want to do this. And we're taking 2 days off, and we're going to help you. And it's okay, terrific. So there's so many people who are fans of the show that came up and talked to me about it too. We're starting to shoot, and I'm getting some stuff. And this car drives up. One of the security Hummers drives up, and out steps this man, brush cut, flat top. And everybody's, oh no. And I went, what do you mean, oh no? What is oh no? And they said, he looks like he's coming for you. And it was the head of security now comes walking over to me and goes, son, come with me. I said, okay, he goes, I know what you're doing. I know the second you stepped off the plane. And I'm like, oh man. Okay. So I get in with him and we're driving into the base. Now the base, it's more than a kilometer long, the drive. And I'm trying to talk to him and he's not talking to me. I said, have you seen the show? And he's like straight ahead, not talking to me. And I said something, and at one point he went, and I went, okay, I guess we're not talking. And so we get there and he goes, come with me. And we start up into the control area, which when I'd first walked through it, a lot of the doors had been shuttered and Space Command I wasn't allowed to look into and things like this. And now the doors are more open and I can sort of look in. And so I'm rubbernecking as we're going. He goes, eyes ahead. And I went, oh man, I am going to the principal's office in a big way here. And I'm thinking, what did I do that got this? We walk down this corridor and we stop. And he goes, look. And I look to the right and there's this door, this white door with a window in it. And it says, Stargate Command. And there's an arrow down like this. And I went, what? He goes, it's a broom closet. I finally had to make it so that there's some place here that people, because they all ask, where's Stargate Command? How'd they get down to it? He goes, I got you, didn't I? He's laughing. He's a huge fan of the show. I got you. You should have seen. I expected a wet spot on that passenger seat when you got out of that seat. And I went, oh man. He goes, I'm a huge fan. Can I be in it? And I went, sure.
Oh,
so
wow.
They have a door there that says Stargate Command.
And it's a broom closet.
It's a broom closet.
Fantastic.
We get in and I've read the script. I know where we're going. It's super exciting. So we do all of our regular stuff. We get the face on. And then, of course, every time I died and came back as a new queen, they gave me a new hairdo, right? So they got this.
Yeah, they're all different personality-wise. Yeah.
Exactly. And different, like, where they were, like, so with Submerging, she's like kind of murky and green and, she's been living in the dark, right? So sleeping in the dark. So she had the different hue. And anyway, they had this black hair, really, really long, gorgeous. And they wanted to like prop it up so it looked like, but not so stuck on my head. So they put like a circle kind of foam thing to give it a bump, So I had this beautiful mane of hair and then this gorgeous, neck piece and, just a stunning outfit. Again, with such talented people in wardrobe. Anyway, we go into set and they're like, okay, here's the plan. We're going to have you, because we want to do this insane crane shot, right? And we go one shot at it. It's going to start from the top and you're going to show the pool and it's going to come around. And what we need you to do is go under the water and hold your breath and count so that so you have a count to 10 as the crane is coming around. And then when it stops, we want you to creepily come out of the water. It's going to be amazing, right? And I'm like, this sounds awesome. So of course it has to look like I'm not in the pool. So they took this gorgeous long hair and they tied it to my belt, right? So that it didn't float up when I was in the water. So the pool itself, even though it looks really, really deep, was only about maybe up to my waist. All right. And so I get into the water. They're describing it all to me. I can feel my mark, which happened to be like I want to say like a curling rock, but it was like a big rock with handles on it.
So you could grab onto it.
So because I'm full of air, right? So they didn't want me to kind of float, right? My butt go up in the air. And it also told me where my mark was, like, so where I was in focus, right? So I took a big, beautiful, deep breath. And I went under and I grabbed hold of this boulder, basically. And right away, I knew, this was a mistake. So I'm not a science expert, but foam floats. And we had completely forgot, like no one had said to me, like, hey, so the second I got under the water, all of a sudden my face wanted to shoot straight out of the pool. And I'm like, oh my God, we have one shot at this crane shot. I've got to keep this face. And at the same simultaneous moment, my hair also decides to want to take off, and it's tied to my pants. So I'm holding onto a boulder under the water, full of breath. And all of a sudden, my pants, my hair, and my face are like trying to launch off. And I'm gripping this thing for all its life. I just have to count to 10. And the boulder is starting to bounce on the bottom of the pool. Like the foam wants to be free. And I also, in the same moment, I'm thinking to myself, the second I let go of this thing, I'm going to shoot out of the water. And that's the complete opposite of what they want. So I basically had to hold onto my pants and slowly allow myself. But it was every single thing was trying to get out of the water. It was hilarious.
Is that the shot that they used?
And yeah, it's in there.
That's the one. It worked.
Yeah, it totally worked.
So the foam didn't disintegrate.
No, but because it was just trying. I was in there 10 seconds. I just had to hold on 10 seconds. But here's the thing. So when I finally come out, they're like, amazing, amazing. Let's reset and we'll go one more. And I'm like, no, we can't go again. My face will come straight up.
One of the other people that that I got to spend a lot of time with, and I'm very thankful, is Don S. Davis. He called you his daughter. You know, he has a son, and you were his daughter. What an amazing human being! Just a giant, and another just absolute lover of life. You know, do you have a story of Don that you can share?
Oh God, so many. Are you kidding? He was a dad. He absolutely was a. He was a dad for sure. I have so many stories. I was just sharing one of them the other day that I cannot repeat.
Okay.
But it was so funny. I really wish I could. And it had to do, Tony Amendola is in it as well. And it was a taxi ride from, I don't know where the heck, we were somewhere, I think in Paris, and we were going, I don't know, going somewhere else, but I can't share it. But suffice it to say, it still makes me cry from laughter. He makes me cry from sadness. He makes me cry from joy. He makes me cry from laughing. And I was thinking of another story. Again, we were in Paris, and Carmen, bless his soul.
God bless him.
Oh my gosh, we were at the Moulin Rouge, and this is back in the heyday of Stargate. So we were treated very, very well. And
it's big in France.
Oh my gosh, it was so amazing. Yes. And just to have that day, that time, the romance of sitting and having dinner, and then the show, and then, live music and getting up to dance. I always felt I was born too late, because I loved that whole era of the 40s and the glam and the dinner and dancing, where you could just in the middle of the meal go and dance. So this song came on, and Carmen brought me up, and we had this amazing dance. And that became our little thing. I'd bump into him or we'd chat, and he'd go, "We'll always have Paris." And we did. We always did have Paris. So and then we all went back to the hotel and stuff, and we had seen some show. I guess it was part of the Moulin Rouge show where there's like acrobatics. And all I remember, Christopher, Donnie, me, and Carmen. And of course, we're imbibing, and we're sitting in Donnie's room, and all of a sudden, Carmen's on his back on the bed with his feet going like this. He's going, "Come on, Don, hop on." Because there was this act where the guy's like this and the other guy's doing somersaults on the feet. He's like, "Hop on." And were just doubled over, and the phone would keep ringing from the, front desk with complaints of too much noise in the room. And so then we're like, oh, well, we might as well go. Are you guys hungry? I don't know what time it was. Yeah, we're hungry. Let's go. And all of us arm in arm walking down the Champs-Elysees, trying to look for something to get food, right? All those are memories. Those are the things that I will treasure. Those are phenomenal memories. Wherever we went, it was just always an experience, and I was thinking of another story. I can't remember if we were in Australia or England, but they had these magnificent bathtubs in the hotels. They were so long, like I literally could stretch out. I know that's not saying much because my ass, but I'm so short. But so I could literally stretch out in the bathtub, but they were quite narrow. So I just loved it. And the next thing I know, we're waiting for dawn. And finally we get this call. He's like, hell, hon, I'm sorry I'm late, because he was so late. He said, I'll be on my way, but I got stuck in my bathtub. You got stuck in your bathtub. Well, it's so goddamn narrow, I couldn't move. I've got a 52-inch chest. I couldn't get out. Anyway, again, it was like constant doubling over with the things that Don would do, the things that Don would say, and pure innocence, right? He was just this big teddy bear of life and love, and he is so missed.
Well, I auditioned in LA because obviously I was living there, and it was still the days of good old-fashioned VHS videotapes. So you would go in and be put on tape, and then the tape would get sent to Rick and the producers. But so I can't, they must have been, it must have started airing already, because I think I was, it was a guest starring role. I just remember, I've told this story before, so apologies if you've heard it before, but I had broken, I auditioned in July or August, it was very hot, and I'd broken my toe, so I couldn't wear closed shoes. Stupid, I literally slipped on a carpet, and if this is a wall, my foot went like boink into the, like your toes split into the wall. So, so I'd broken, or I think I broke my toe, who knows? It was really sore. I couldn't wear closed shoes. It had swollen up quite badly. And so I couldn't wear, so I was like, well, I'm going to have to wear flip-flops. And then flip-flops sort of reduces what you can wear with it. Like you can't go in a power suit and flip-flops. And they have been quite vague about the dress. Like they didn't really say anything. And you only get sides as an actor. And for anyone watching who doesn't know what sides are, it's a portion of the script. And very often they change, and especially nowadays, if you're auditioning for a massive franchise like Stargate, Star Wars or anything like that, they change the names, or they put your name, they brandish your own name across the sides, so that if there is a leak on the internet, they just have to go, Suanne. But in those days, everyone was a little more Harry casual about everything, I think. And so I remember getting the sides and thinking, why does she, because there was no indication that she was royal or a goddess. And the audition scene was the first scene where the men come to her, and she talks, like she's asking, where's Ra? And
when she wakes up.
No, so I have to do
she's already at the base
where they come, and just before, where she says to lovely Don Estevez, you with a crown of marble and stuff. So I remember thinking, I was like, that's a cool line. And there was something about the way it was structured and written that it felt quite formal. And the only people I knew who use we are the royalty. So I was like, oh, maybe she's a queen. So I was like, well, I'm just going to play it like that. However, I had trousers on, slacks, pants, and my sort of flip-flops and a nice top. I can't remember. But when I got there, everyone was in sexy, tight dresses. And I remember just thinking, oh, God, I have misjudged this one terribly. And then I went in, and again, they were like, this is a new sci-fi show. And all I was told was that Richard Dean Anderson was the lead. They didn't say anything about like who the scene would be with. And he was like, okay, go. And he said to me, oh, can you do it in an American accent? So I said, yeah, sure. Because the casting director I'd read for on numerous occasions, and they knew that I worked in both. Mm-hmm. And then he was like, great, thanks very much. That's all we need. And then he said, is there anything you'd like to ask? And I said, well, yeah, I said, I'm just curious. Is she a queen or royalty, or is she mad? Like, and he's like, He said, like, if you were to play her mad, he said, she's not mad, but they all think she's mad. So, and I'd asked that in my own accent. And he said, actually, let's do another one, but let's use your own accent and really play up the like regal thing. And that, you know, they think you mad, but you're not. So, you know, that whole thing of like, so I was like, okay. And then all I remember is I sort of sat back in my chair and I was very much like, you come to me. You know, like that. And yeah, it obviously worked. So that was that.
Absolutely.
I keep looking through this box and I see all these binders and they all have my name. And I remember that I used to keep all of my scripts in binders, but I did find this. It's probably gonna be reversed because of the camera, but
no, it's correct.
So this is my binder that they gave me when I arrived in Vancouver. So on this first page, it says, hello and welcome to Vancouver. Enclosed, you'll find a package of information to help familiarize yourself with the city. And this is the Stargate Atlantis. This
the original production logo.
This is the very first package that I got. There's all and it's got all my it's got tabs of contacts of all the actors. It's my cast, the cast list, and this is the Rising script. This is the very first pilot script, and so it's really cool, and it's like perfect because it's been in this binder.
Did you notate really cool while you went along? Were you someone who notated your scripts?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm hold on.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty crazy. So I kept going deeper, and then I just found that I have all my scripts from season 1. I literally have, they're all marked up to crap and destroyed. But I know that people like these things, so I'm not going to keep them. So I guess maybe I'll find a way to get everyone to sign them and see if I can get rid of them for charity or something.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would be very strategic about that. I would keep that.
I'm going to keep this one because I just want one. I'm going to keep the Rising script with the Vancouver package. Yeah, and all these notes of like how to get to the to the studio, like from my house that production hand wrote me, so I would know how to get there.
Had
like
you lived in Vancouver before?
No, and the first photo gallery shoot. Oh man,
let's see them.
Oh no, it's just a page. It's just I haven't looked through these. It's just like so. Yeah, it's nothing. It's just all the like the schedule sheets.
Oh,
and stuff.
Got it. Okay, for
it's
promotional.
Just like I'm just flooded with memories of like being a 24-year-old. Oh man, it's me writing notes about all the weapons that Ford carries.
Tactical switchblade.
Yeah,
because he was going to be the weapons expert on the show.
That was originally. I mean, he was, but they didn't really
enhance that aspect of it.
Yeah, they didn't enhance many aspects until they were kicking me out.
Well, I mean,
and they're like, give him acting stuff now. It's on the way out. Let him act.
Wind of Opportunity originally, the pitch I came up with was very dark, and I think I might have mentioned this in a previous discussion, the fact that it was really about SG-1 encountering a civilization that was facing an apocalyptic event, and we're using a device to re-loop time in order to give them time to avert the catastrophe that never could be averted. And I remember Rob reading it, he was like, why don't we do this? And he was offering me, he's like, do this and change this and that. And suddenly I realized, I was like, we're just doing Groundhog Day. And he was like, yeah, do Groundhog Day.
And you give that line to Rick.
Like, yeah. And at the time I was like, we can't just do Groundhog Day. And I realized reading what I think was it Hemingway who said every story is already being told. Ultimately, you know, it's some variation of the story is already being told. But what makes it special is that it's your characters who are living, experiencing it. And especially the fact that it's O'Neill and Teal'c, the two guys who know nothing about science, who know nothing really, little about the ancient language, were the ones who have to figure it out. And, you know, one of the things I always loved about Stargate was a sense of humor. I remember, you know, Brad telling me one day, you know, he was like, you know, this series is just a comedy now. We're just doing a comedy. And,
many respects.
You know, yeah, I mean, but, you know, he was exaggerating, but, you know, I always found humor goes a long way towards allowing audiences to connect with characters, but they bring those moments of levity that by contrast make the darker moments that much darker or more poignant, like that the scene with you mentioned with O'Neill appealing to Malachi.
It's beautiful, and it's one of the most natural scenes of the show. Mm-hmm. If you really take a moment to understand where Malachi's pain is coming from, and force that character to think about what's going to happen next, and then what's going to happen after that. You know, I mean, unless he's just so love-stricken and just over the loss of his wife that he'll be willing to sit through her death again and again. What else can you do but shut it off?
Right.
This is such an important episode of the franchise. I'm very curious as to what that original draft looked like. Did SG-1 come upon the planet and the time loop happened in front of them, and because they were out of that planet's loop, they just watched everything restart?
No, to be fair, it wasn't a draft. It was just a one-page pitch.
Oh, I see.
So, and from that, we ended up with the outline for Window of Opportunity. So it was very different, but it wasn't really fully fleshed out. It was just an idea at that point.
And in that original idea, SG-1 watched the civilization just go ahead and die?
No, but they well, at the end, yes.
Okay.
So, you know, now that I think of it, just back-to-back destroyed civilizations is what I pitched. And neither of them were destroyed in the end. So,
Joseph Mallozzi, PhD, provides Latin for the novice in this.
Yes, that was Peter Deloise. We were in the in the concept meeting, and of course the props department. What kind of shoelaces? What color shoelaces do you want? What kind of shoes do you want? What kind of a book do you want? And Peter was like, what was it? The Latin for the novice. It was like author Joseph Mallozzi, and they were like, okay, and
who chose Fruit Loops?
We wrote Fruit Loops into the script, and we were having trouble actually getting the rights to Fruit Loops. And I remember they came back and they were like, how about Cheerios? And we're like, no, it doesn't make any sense.
Jack.
Yeah.
He's
so
a kid.
We ended up and also Fruit Loops. Anyways, so we ended up getting the Fruit Loops. Yeah.
And they had to be glued to the spoon.
I don't recall. Like, I wasn't on set for that.
Okay. But, oh my God. And so it ran short. I would think that, an aside, I would think that Daniel heavy episodes would typically move through the dialogue faster. One of the things that Martin Garrow told us about is when he was writing for First Contact, he had to keep in mind that Rodney and Daniel both spoke very fast.
Sure.
And that has to come into play when you're timing episodes, the velocity at which the actors will move through the content.
Yeah, I mean, I think back to SG-1, and our those scripts would average 52, 53 pages, whereas the Atlanta scripts would average closer to 57, 58, sometimes 59 pages.
Yeah, well, the fact of the matter was that McKay had to move along a lot of the plot.
Yep.
That poor guy. That was his primary role, in addition to just being Rodney.
Yep.
Wow. Any fan reactions that you've gotten to Window of Opportunity over the years that stand out in your mind? It's people bring it back again and again in terms of heroes and the fifth race and this episode as to, I showed this to my little cousins. I showed Window of Opportunity to them, and I showed Ergo to them as hooks to get them invested in the show. Are you surprised that it continually comes up?
I am kind of surprised, to be honest with you. Just we did 300 episodes. It was like last year or maybe earlier this year, I did the Stargate Greatest Episode Challenge, where I had, all the fans vote on episodes, and then we did, kind of the head-to-head, and Window of Opportunity ended up coming out on top, which was, I'm glad fans loved the show so much. But I think, I think the funnier episodes tend to do well, but it was also a funny episode with heart and humor.
Exactly.
You get a combination of that, then you have a winner. So I'm just glad it worked out and the fans enjoyed it.
Exactly right. And with Dark Matter, all the time in the world.
Yep. And it's kind of funny. I was saying, I bookend my career with time loop episodes.
Was there a subconscious hope that it would be along the levels of success in that individual episode?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That one was actually, in many ways, a very difficult episode to write, but also a very fast write as well. It was weird in that I knew I wanted to do a time loop episode, and I ended up watching 24 time loop episodes of every genre show that has ever done a time loop episode, because they've all done them, right? So you want to do something different. So I synthesized the formula, and I try to kind of find a way to subvert it. And we were in the room. So this is an example where you're in the room and you're trying to spin the idea and it's not going anywhere. One of the things my former writing partner, Paul, was very good at was flagging issues, which he would do, but sometimes when he would do them in the room, he would not offer up a solution. And so we would kind of hit a wall. And we spent 2 days in the room, writer's room, and we got nothing done on Window of Opportunity. Sorry, not Window of Opportunity, on All the Time in the World. And then I remember it came time for me to write it, and I just started writing, and I pretty much wrote the entire script in a day, which I've never done before. In a way, but it was a funny episode, and I tend to write the funnier ones faster. And so everything just kind of came together in a scary way. And I don't really know how to explain it. I'm sure other writers have experienced it as well, where you're getting nowhere with the script, you think you're never going to get it done. And then somehow magically the narrative falls into place, all the pieces fall into place, and you come up with a script, not only a script that is serviceable, but a script that turned out to be, a fan favorite, the Dark Matter fan favorite.
My thanks to WonderCon for giving us this opportunity to showcase Dial the Gate to an audience outside of YouTube. My great thanks to Jenny Stiven for making this opportunity possible as well. Hope you had a great weekend at our online convention. Hope next year we'll be able to do it in person. My name is David Reed. See you on the other side.